Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Robin Minter-Smyers, a partner at Thompson Hine and the president of the City Club's Board of Directors. I'm pleased to welcome you to the annual State of the Schools Address, the City Club forum where we come together to hear about the health and progress of one of our region's most important assets, the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. Our speaker is Eric Gordon, the district's Chief Executive Officer. Since passing the $15 million levy that funded the Cleveland Plan for transforming the schools 5 years ago, the Cleveland schools have been steadily improving. Graduation rates are now over 74%, a 22.5% gain since the inception of the Cleveland Plan, and test scores have increased nearly 7%. But challenges remain, as reinforced by the school district's failing grade on the Ohio Department of Education's recently released report card on the district. Mr. Gordon joins us today to talk about the successes and challenges of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. We can expect to hear an update on how the Cleveland Plan is working and learn more about the district's plans and priorities for assisting our children to achieve their full potential. Ladies and gentlemen, members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, and concerned citizens of the city, I present to you the 2018 State of the Schools Address, Eric Gordon, the Chief Executive Officer of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me for my 8th State of the Schools Address. I'd like to thank Dan Moulthrop and the City Club staff for hosting and televising our event again this year. And thank you to the sponsors who made it possible to expand the number of seats at this event of over 900 people so that more of my fellow educators and our student scholars, their families and caregivers, and significant community partners can be part of this annual progress report on our schools. Would you please join me in thanking the sponsors and supporters that are listed in your program? Before I begin my formal remarks, I want to recognize a few people in attendance today. First, Mayor Frank G. Jackson, serving a record 4th term as mayor of the great city of Cleveland. Thank you, Mayor Jackson, for your vision and your continued strong leadership of Cleveland's plan for transforming schools and for the reforms that I have had the privilege of implementing in Cleveland's public schools under your leadership. Thank you, Mayor. The plan itself would not have brought us to where we are today without the outstanding leadership and guidance of the Cleveland Board of Education. Strong board leadership is vital to the success of any school district, but our board here in Cleveland is known and recognized nationally for its unparalleled service and dedication. Several board members are here today. Please stand and be recognized. Board Chair Ann Bingham, Board Vice Chair Robert Hurd, and board members Denise Link, Willetta Milam, and Shalitha Mitchell, who are all with us today. I am also privileged to share this moment each year with several members of my senior leadership team who are here today. I am proud to work with such an incredibly talented team of committed leaders. Thank you to each of you for all you do. And a special thank you to Dr. Roseanne Canfora, our Chief Communications Officer. Roseanne always makes this event a labor of love, but she truly went above and beyond this year in particular. Can we thank my leadership team, and particularly Dr. Canfora? And although most of our CMSD educators are at work in their schools or work areas today, I'm pleased that a number of them were able to join us and to bring our scholars with them. Would all CMSD educators and scholars in attendance please stand and let us recognize you? We are here today to talk about our belief in you and your success in our classrooms every day. Thank you all for being here. Also with us today are key partners in education who consistently attend our State of the Schools event, including the men and women who help to shape and who continue to support the Cleveland Plan. These include the Greater Cleveland Partnership, the Cleveland Foundation, the George Gunn Foundation, the Cleveland Teachers Union, Breakthrough Charter Schools, and our growing number of charter school colleagues in the Cleveland Education Compact, and our Say Yes to Education partners. Thank you all for your devotion to the success of Cleveland's children as well. And finally, I am most grateful to the people of Cleveland for their belief in public education and their support of Issue 107, Issue 4, and Issue 108, that in the last 6 years has done so much to revitalize our schools and restore hope for a bright future for the children of this city. So as you've probably noticed, Twitter has become increasingly popular for both personal and business use, and most recently in politics for a variety of uses and resulting effects. You did notice? By people in significant positions of leadership. In fact, some of them just can't resist the temptation of using 280 characters to make their opinions known, all day long, all the time. Tweets like this one. It was the morning after Kofifi that President Trump found himself with a Twitter storm waiting on his phone, with people all over the world, including an editor at Merriam-Webster, venturing on one opinion after another for the definition of Kofifi. There were insensitive responses like this one. That invited defensive tweets like this one. And the wise guys. Oh, you like Kofifi? Then name their 3 latest albums. The philosophers weighed in. I know everyone is excited, but don't be taken by opportunistics, this one says. Kofifi isn't something you can buy, it's something you have to become. And in the strange case of Kofifi itself, even the president weighed in, continuing, who can figure out the true meaning of Kofifi? Enjoy. There we go. And it continues. That's Kofifi. That little bit of fun aside, corporate and community leaders are finding increasing value in using Twitter as another means of keeping their constituencies updated, to tap into the thoughts and opinions of others, and even to see what people are thinking about the information they share. But there's a challenge and a responsibility that comes with trying to communicate complex messages, like Kofifi, in 280 characters. And as you saw, once communicated, the responses are likely to be wide and varied. As we prepared to open this school year, I received 2 tweets on my own Twitter account, @EricGordon_CEO, that really got me thinking about this phenomenon. The first read, we often and rightfully talk about what is to repair, improve in Cleveland. What we have as a known goodness is an amazing cadre of teachers, staff, and @EricGordon_CEO who love our kids and teach them with every fiber of their best selves every day. This I know, thank you. And, probably not to be unexpected, not long after, this tweet came in response. I disagree with your judgment of Eric. Might be a nice person, but he doesn't have a clue about his district. He's surrounded by wannabes and people that give him misinformation to their betterment. I would love to have a sincere conversation with you about this. So why would I share these tweets with you? I mean, especially that second one. Well, to me it's clear that in some ways, both of these Twitter users are right. And neither of them is right. We need people like the first tweeter to celebrate and to champion the legitimately good work my fellow educators and I have accomplished and the progress we have made in the CMSD. So in that way, The first tweet is absolutely right. We do have an amazing cadre of teachers and staff who love our kids and teach them with every fiber of their best selves every day. And that amazing effort has led to real and meaningful improvements across this city. But we also need to acknowledge the concerns of skeptics, like the second tweeter, and the harsh realities we face every day in this very difficult work. While I don't agree that I'm clueless, or that I have a team that is not trying hard every day to move the needle for kids, I do think we need to pay attention to the broader message. There is still a lot of hard work to be done, and we can't and shouldn't declare victory while ignoring our current reality. So in both tweets, there is some truth. But with a 280-character limit, both tweets are indeed incomplete as well. There is, of course, a lot more to be said when it comes to assessing the state of our schools, both here formally today and informally, day by day, as members of the community have many chances to weigh in 280 characters at a time with their thoughts around our progress. What achievements have we made that are worth recognizing? What are the real challenges that we must still take on? And how do you convey those answers in 280 characters? Well, today, I'm going to give it a try. So last Thursday, the Ohio Department of Education released its annual report cards for Ohio's schools and districts. This is the third year of the full implementation of Ohio's new report card, and the bar for all Ohio schools has been set extremely high. So high, in fact, that many across the state are trying to get rid of the report card, or at least lower the standards to make them easier to achieve. But while some are trying to get rid of these new high standards, CMSD is busy working to achieve those goals. And to be clear, we have not yet done so. It's one of the harsh realities we face. On the achievement measure itself, for example, CMSD scored an F again this year. That fact fits nicely on a tweet. However, it's not the entire story. What the F doesn't immediately show is that CMSD posted gains in proficiency on 19 of 21 state tests measured, or that the district's average gain this year was 6.7 percentile points, far higher than the average gain of 1.2 points seen statewide, or of the 4-point gain seen in other Ohio urban districts. That F also hides the fact that the state's performance index, a summary score of overall test performance, moved from an F to a D this year, posting the strongest gain on this measure of any Ohio urban district since it was created in 2016. The Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com even pointed out this accomplishment in examining this year's data as well. In fact, CMSD's two-year 5.8-point gain on the performance index is more than double the state average of 2.6. And while CMSD increased 1.8 points this year alone, compared to 1/10 of a point statewide, nearly half of Ohio's school districts actually went down on the performance index this year. So in the case of achievement, it is both true that we are both going in the right direction and more quickly than most, but it is also true that we still have a long way to go. The state's gap closing measure is a measure showing how well school districts are meeting performance expectations in English and math for our most vulnerable populations, as well as expectations for meeting Ohio's graduation requirements and for meeting English learners' language acquisition for English language learners. Here, too, CMSD is showing progress. Up from an F last year, CMSD earned a D on the gap closing measure, closing gaps in English language arts in every single subgroup. White students, black students, Hispanic students, Asian, American Indian, Alaskan Native, economically disadvantaged, English language learners, and students with disabilities, every single subgroup by at least 10% in English language arts. CMSD also met the state's gap closing goals in mathematics for white, Hispanic, multiracial, Asian, and American Indian, Alaskan Native students, as well as our English language learners. And while we did not meet the 10% gap closing goal for Black students, students with disabilities, or economically disadvantaged students, we showed significant progress on all three of those groups as well. And CMSD continues to close gaps in graduation rates for our students compared to their state peers in nearly every subgroup as well. With that data alone, CMSD would have actually earned a B on this state measure. However, we struggled in meeting growth targets for English language acquisition for our newcomer students, for students who are new to America and for whom English language and American culture are brand new. And that struggle brought our total score to a D. And yet, even with those real challenges still ahead of us, CMSD outperformed 61 other Ohio school districts on Ohio's gap closing measure this year. Last year, I shared that CMSD had earned a C on Ohio's K-3 literacy indicator, surpassing 88 other school districts, including some surprising ones right here in Northeast Ohio. This year, our performance remained essentially flat and dropped to a D on this indicator, based largely on the fact that Ohio is using a new grading scale this year. Still, when we compare our performance statewide, CMSD again made a huge jump forward, this year outperforming 113 other Ohio school districts. That's 20% of the school districts that had a score on this measure this year. And where last year only 79.6% of our third grade students met Ohio's third grade reading guarantee expectations, this year 83.9% of third graders met this important threshold. That means over 100 more students and more than 2,200 students in total are now reading at a level sufficient to tackle fourth grade content and beyond. On Ohio's graduation rate measure, while still rated as an F, we continued to show huge gains, improving our graduation rate another 2.5 percentage points to another record high of 74.6% this year. That's a total increase of 22.4 percentage points since 2011, making us not only the fastest improving urban school district, but the fourth fastest improving school district in the entire state of Ohio. But wait, there's more. Graduation rates for our Hispanic students, which once lagged 15.6 percentage points behind their Hispanic peers, now stands at 74.3%, and that is 0.7 percentage points higher than the state average for Hispanic students in Ohio. Graduation rates for our Black students, now at 75.2%, is 6.8 percentage points higher than the state average for African American students in Ohio. That's right. If you are a Black or Hispanic student in Cleveland, you are more likely to graduate high school than you are compared to your minority peers in this state, and that is something to celebrate. CMSD's 5-year graduation rate also continues to grow. Now at 79.6%, we missed a D grade on the Ohio report card by just 11 kids. We'll grab that grade improvement next year. So, on many measures, it would be fair for our Twitter champion to celebrate the progress that the love, dedication, and hard work of our educators has achieved for Cleveland's kids. But while there are a number of really positive data points on the report card, there are some harsh realities too. For example, CMSD's progress score, commonly known as value added, remained an F again this year, clearly showing the troubling impact of summer learning loss. We know, for example, that CMSD students grow an average of 12 points each year on a common measure known as the MAP test. It's a test of English and mathematics. That is, they grow 12 points from the beginning of the school year when they meet their teachers to the end of the school year when we dismiss for summer. But here's the reality when we look at what happened from the beginning of last year to the beginning of this year, taking summer break into account. That 12-point gain is nearly eliminated, with students starting only 1 point ahead of the prior year when they return from summer break. So while our achievement data shows gains on overall test score performance and significant gains on proficiency overall, we simultaneously see lots of those gains washed out over the summer, leaving our students only slightly ahead of where they started just the year before. It's also true that while many more CMSD students are graduating high school than ever before, far too few are graduating fully ready for college or a high-skill, high-wage career. That's not to say that our students graduate with no readiness, but it does say that our students are not fully ready, as clearly evident on Ohio's Ready for Success report card measure. So all that together leaves CMSD with an overall grade of F on the report card this year, along with only 13 other school districts in Ohio. We were close, to be sure, but even if we had earned the 0.061 additional points we needed for a D, would we really want to celebrate that? Frankly, this is a club we simply can't afford to stay in. And as I said earlier, our Twitter critic would be absolutely right to point out that not all is good and that there is a lot more to do. That's precisely the reason that last year I introduced you to Say Yes to Education. Say Yes to Education, a comprehensive support system for kids and their families, coupled with a last dollar scholarship which guarantees all CMSD graduates the opportunity for career and college training, is the absolutely right next step if we're really going to tackle summer learning loss and true college or career readiness post-high school. I'm pleased to report that over the years since we were last together, committees of dozens of leaders across Cleveland have continued the work of completing Cleveland's path to Say Yes, and we're making great progress. This team of people have analyzed tons of data about our city, its schools, and many of our community's other child and family services and supports. We have worked on memorandums of understanding that articulate how public government, our city, our county, our libraries, and our schools can work together in a more integrated way, even as our nonprofit and philanthropic community have examined how better to align all of the children-serving assets of Cleveland around the common goal of ensuring career and college readiness for CMSD's student population upon graduation. And corporate, philanthropic, and individual support is also underway to create a scholarship fund that will guarantee every CMSD graduate the opportunity to pursue his or her college and career goals. But we need to finish that journey this calendar year and begin implementing these critical wraparound supports, along with the guaranteed last dollar scholarships this spring, if we are truly going to improve these additional critical state indicators, and more importantly, meet the truly ambitious achievement goals of the Cleveland Plan. I'm sure you've heard the expression, Rome wasn't built in a day. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, uses this famous phrase about the Roman Empire in his counseling of athletes, artists, and entrepreneurs, helping them to not lose sight of their potential as they work hard to continuously change and improve. To encourage them to keep the faith and stay the course, he reminds them Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every hour. The problem, he says, is that it can be really easy to overestimate the importance of building an empire and to underestimate the importance of simply laying another brick. As we saw in the differing opinions of the authors of the two tweets I shared earlier, it's easy to discount the work of reform, all the hard work that educators across the city have put into the Cleveland Plan over the last several years, by declaring that we haven't built the empire we promised. But Rome wasn't built in a day, or a year, or even 6 years. In truth, Rome was built hour by hour, day by day, year by year, by continuously laying bricks, one after another, until slowly but surely an empire emerged. But even that's not enough. While it's true that Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's true that Rome was built brick by brick and hour by hour, why do we actually care about Rome? I mean, there were many other cities being built, brick by brick, hour by hour. Why has Rome arisen as the example? Well, it's not just that they built it, it's what they built. With those bricks, they built the Pantheon, the Piazza Navona, the Colosseum, the Roman Forum, Trevi Fountain, the Spanish Steps, and the Vatican. You see, they weren't just building for the day, they were building for the future. Similarly, under the Cleveland Plan, CMSD has been building for the future too. Unlike any other Ohio school district, our high school students can now choose from over 36 different school options, including 3 early college high schools, an international baccalaureate high school, a high school for the performing arts, and another for digital arts, schools for architecture and design, engineering, aerospace and maritime studies, civic and business leadership, information technologies, and global studies, 3 different high school options for science, health, and medical careers, and several options for vocational studies, including construction, manufacturing, criminal justice, business and hospitality careers, environmental studies, and more. In fact, our students from Jane Addams High School are right now on Public Square with the state's only student-run food truck, part of their culinary career training in one of our high schools on Public Square. I'm glad you had lunch with me instead of them. I'll apologize to them later. They'll be at Walnut Wednesday tomorrow. This year, CMSD launched 3 new learning models in 13 of our pre-K 8 schools and are expanding our international baccalaureate programming to the new William Rainey Harper School as well. But we can do more. That's why my team and I have embarked on an ambitious effort over the last year to define what great learning and teaching looks like, not just for now, but for the future. And in the coming year, we'll be looking at how to take advantage of the most advanced learning technologies, blended learning, virtual reality, and simulation technologies, for example, like those now being used by the best colleges, universities, and even the highest performing corporations themselves. You see, we can't just strive to catch up to Ohio's standards. Instead, like the Romans did, even as they were laying each individual brick, we need to seek to define them for the future. Since launching the Cleveland Plan in 2012, we've laid hundreds of bricks on our reform path. Each brick laid was born out of the dreams and ideals of so many people in this room who not only envision a high-quality education system for every child in the city, but who backed that vision with a commitment to realize that dream and to provide the resources and supports needed to make it happen. It's true, we're not done. We haven't arrived at our goal. And yes, we still have a long way to go. But like Rome, the Cleveland Plan is the result of a vision. And like the Romans, the bricks we've laid, hour by hour, day by day, year by year, are the system we are designing and putting in place to achieve that dream. In using the same analogy, James Clear counsels his athletes that there's nothing impressive about laying one brick. And he cautions them not to see incremental progress as a grand feat of strength or stamina, but instead to see each gain as an integral part of the larger greatness they are striving to achieve. At the same time, however, he cautions them not to lose patience, recognizing that every solid layer builds strength to hold the next one. Likening the process of change to the building of any grand structure, laying a brick every hour, building on layers of bricks year after year, is precisely how a community of people builds an empire strong enough to endure for generations. Generations of children, generations of Clevelanders, generations to come. Today, I've shared our progress, our current realities, and our goals to tackle the challenges ahead of us. So do we have progress worth celebrating this year, or are we just fooling ourselves? Let me know what you think by tweeting me at EricGordon_CEO, hashtag CLE State of Schools 18. I look forward to reading your thoughts 280 characters at a time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending today and for supporting our 39,000 scholars, their parents and caregivers. I am going to get a shout out, and also for our 7,500 educators district-wide. And thank you to each of you who individually and collectively have helped construct this vision for transforming Cleveland Public Schools, brick by brick, hour by hour, as we pursue our dream to build an educational empire for the children of Cleveland and for the future of the great city we love. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions today.
Today, the City Club is at the Renaissance Cleveland Hotel, where Eric Gordon, CEO of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, is presenting the 2018 State of the Schools Address. We're about to begin the audience Q&A. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, or those of you joining us via live stream. If you have a question, please form a line behind the designated microphone stand where our staff are standing. We ask that the students line up behind the microphone facing the left side of the stage, and the rest of our guests line up at the microphone facing the right side of the room. If you'd like to tweet a question, please tweet it at the City Club using the hashtag #StateOfTheCMSD, and our staff will try to work it into the program. We want to remind you that your questions should be questions and brief and to the point. May we please have the first question?
What are the district plans for our children who are homeless? What progress are in place to help these families?
Thank you. What's your name and where do you go to school?
Georgia, I go to Noondy Baker School of the Arts.
Great, thank you. So George's question was, was what do we plan to do for students who are homeless? And you had a second part of your question.
What progress are in place to help these families?
Great. So unfortunately, it is a part of our reality that at any given time, about 5% of our students live in homelessness. And over the course of a year, 10% of our students have experienced homelessness. That's a fact of our community. We have a really important program called Project ACT that is specifically designed to support homeless children and their families. As part of Project ACT, we try to make sure that we provide transportation so that kids can stay at the school where they know their friends and their teachers and don't have to move to wherever they might be living if it's doubled up with a family or if it's in a shelter or even with no place to live. We also have coaches that actually go to the schools to work with the kids to make sure that they can stay involved in their classroom and to work with families to find resources and supports that can help them move back into a housing setting. And we work with great partners like some here, the United Way and 211 and lots of others who help us to access services and supports for those families as well. I mentioned this notion of say yes to education. This is one of those things that Say Yes to Education will help us do for everyone in the city, is make sure those services are available exactly when a student and a family needs it. Thanks for your question, Georgia. Nice question.
Hi, I'm Danielle Godomsky-Littleton from the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, and I'm wondering what plans the district has to implement restorative justice principles or otherwise reduce suspensions and expulsions.
Sure. So thank you first for your partnership. Just so that everybody knows, we have 3 legal clinics in the school district that Legal Aid is a part of, so that when families do experience an eviction notice or a custody issue, they can come to school and get help rather than have disruptions of families. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank you for that. The district, through our social emotional learning, has really been working hard on promotive and preventative practices for discipline and are working towards social justice and restorative justice practices as well. We have a team right now with our Cleveland Teachers Union who is here that is working on continuing to embed deeper restorative justice practices into our code of conduct itself. And we have collectively worked aggressively to reduce suspension, out-of-school suspension time for all students. The American Institutes for Research last year did a study of our data, and there we also saw some really good news in that, in that we have eliminated the disparity between African American students and white students in out-of-school suspension time and number of days. So we're driving those gaps closer. I can't seem to get this water down. We're driving those gaps closer, and we're continuing to embed those practices through the social emotional learning curriculum. In addition to that, we have a number of schools that have taken on social justice as their entire curriculum, or Facing History New Tech as an example. And we had schools last year piloting a rapid response where teachers in those schools looked for internal restorative practices to avoid external, and we're getting ready to replicate that again this year. So quite a bit of work going on in this important space. Thank you for your question.
All right, good afternoon. My question is, what inspires you to come to work every day?
What's your name?
Jay Sean,
And Jay Sean, where do you go to school?
Way Park Elementary.
So I promise this isn't a setup. We had the same question a couple of years ago, and I have the same answer today. It's you. It's all the young people in this room. Somebody asked me earlier before I came on the stage, my wife and I, do we have any kids? I have 39,000 kids, and you're one of them. And I don't mean that as lip service. I actually have a number of kids that I've met along the way that have become part of my family, that I celebrate their celebrations with them, that come to my house. It's you. That's why all of the educators in this room do what they do. We don't do it for report cards. We don't do it for the grand stature that teachers receive in this country. That's a joke. We do it for you. And so thank you for coming here and giving us a chance to be a part of your life. Thank you. Okay, I just got to say, the City Club rearranged this so the adults didn't get squeezed out. There's a line out the door of kids. This is your last chance, adults, so we're going to go with it.
My name is Brianna, and my question is, how is the CMSD culture evolving and changing?
How is the culture evolving and changing? That's a great question, and it's something that my team and I are working really hard on. You know, in education right now, driven by report cards and accountability and things like that, there's a real fear culture going on, not just in Cleveland schools, but in schools all across our country. And we have to be accountable. The report card I just talked about is important so that you're getting what you need, but we have to create a culture where we're working together collaboratively to get better. So I work very closely with David Kolke, the president of our teachers union, and we are collectively working on moving from where we were in some really tough challenges of the past to a much more collaborative problem-solving experience. His team and my team often go to schools together to help us show that collaboration, help solve problems. I've been talking a great deal with teachers and other educators about this notion of safe practice. So it's important that teachers are evaluated, like I have to be evaluated, but we also want teachers to practice new skills. And we wouldn't have you in your classroom teach you a new skill and then give you the assessment right away. We would create a place for you to practice it. So we have to do the same for teachers, where they have a safe place to practice the new inquiry models that they're learning in the 13 schools, for example. And at the central office, we were actually closed for half a day last Friday so that all of our central office employees could come together to learn our strategy more deeply and to learn what does it look like to be a continuously improving organization instead of an organization that just lives in fear and I only do what I'm told and I don't try to make it better. So there's a whole lot of things that it takes to change the culture of a really big, really old organization, but there's a lot of people working on that question. So you'll see more of it, I hope, and I hope you're seeing it in your school. Thank you.
My name is Rosalind, and as a 10th grader at Garrett Morgan, we need a new building. With the new building already under construction, 1 minute away from our school, will the Garrett Morgan transition to that building?
So you are right that you need a new building at Garrett Morgan. We do have members of the Garrett Morgan school community who are part of the planning for our new site. Will the programming look the same? That I can't tell you because it's going to be designed in a community, but we know that Garrett Morgan students, because they get to choose where you go. You get to choose Garrett Morgan. You will be able to choose that new school. And so we know that that new school building right up the street from you has to have you in mind. And I'm going to ask somebody to snag you on the way out the door because we need students on the planning team. So you just volunteered. So go get me a name here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Olivia DePerna. I'm the Senior and Vice President Facing History New Tech. And each school does have devices and security guards, but the main question is, after all these tragedies that have happened all over, what more is CMS doing to make sure that this doesn't happen at our schools?
Sure. So actually yesterday I was in Washington, D.C. because I was invited to speak on a panel about school safety. And it's because of the things that your educators district-wide have been doing for more than a decade. So you are right, and for those who haven't visited a CMSD school, our schools are what are called hardened. You go through a security metal detector and sometimes a book bag scanner, just like you do at the airport, just like you now do at sporting events and increasingly other places. But hardening schools is not the solution. And you know, simply screening for the potential of something coming in a building isn't the solution. And you know as a student, if somebody wants something in, they're going to get it in. What we have to do is to continue to build like you do at Facing History, that culture, the restorative justice that we talked about earlier, where the school community feels safe inside, so that when something does happen outside, you'll feel comfortable to let us know and we can intervene with the problem. And so it is about continuing to invest in our social emotional learning. How do we interact with each other, making sure that you feel safe not only with your peers but with your adults, so that you'll lift up problems, asking you, and you know, many of you and your peers come to our student advisories where we ask you for feedback, and really staying in what do we do to prevent these tragedies in the first place. The other piece that I think we have to keep focused on, and we do here in Cleveland, is that schools are not independent of their community. And so we also have to have a plan for what happens when your safe space is violated. And it's not always a weapon or a shooting or the things that you see on the national news, but what happens when a community event impacts you and your student peers and the adults in your building. And so we also have a rapid response team that we deploy across the district at any time that there's any kind of stressor or tragedy that's impacting the school community, whether or not it's something that occurred in the school, so that when that support is needed, you know that we care and that we're there to support you. So it's about keeping vigilant, you know, see something, say something, but it's more about the culture among the kids and the adults in those schools and continuing to focus on those kinds of things that you're doing at Facing History New Tech. Thank you.
My name is Jose LeBron, and I go to One Elementary, and my question is that what if that, like, some students, they struggle with, like, mental disabilities, like, you know, they have problems with being social with others and stuff like that, and what can you guys do, like, to help students like that?
Yeah, so mental health is a big issue in our community, and you know, here's the secret, it's not unique to Cleveland. This is a problem in our nation, and trauma is big in our community, and a lot of young people have experienced trauma and then carry that to school. Part of this Say Yes to Education work that I mentioned in my remarks today is about how do we coordinate services that already exist in our community so that they're more easily accessible in school where you are. And so thinking about we have great partnerships with the mental health community, the mental health provider community here in Cleveland, and all of them have a relationship with our schools, but how do we create a space where they have actual space in our schools and that they're actually paid their state and federal dollars to be in school where you are and help you when you need it? And how do we change our policies so that your parents know that you're going to have access to mental health services in our schools, and that we can do a basic screen and call your mom or your dad or your caregiver and say, looks like we need a little bit more support, can we get you in it? And remove a lot of those barriers. The services are there. We have to connect the services with the people who need those services, and that's what those hundreds of people working on this Say Yes to Education strategy are attempting to do right now. And it is my goal, you know, we won't get it until you know, we've met all of the indicators, but it's my goal that we complete that journey yet this year so that we can get those services to you quicker than we have in the past. So great question, thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna pause from the students because we do have a couple of adults.
I've heard Betsy DeVos talk about the plausibility of arming teachers. How do you feel about that in the Cleveland system?
So first of all, I would remind us that police officers cannot carry weapons into correctional facilities. They have to lock their weapon before they go into the facility. So if we wouldn't let trained professionals bring a weapon into a facility designed for detention, then there is no place for weapons inside of our schools. And teachers should not be police officers.
Hi.
Hi there.
First of all, as a teacher, I would just like to thank you for that last comment, because
That was the easiest question I've had so far.
Okay, good. Good, then I'm going to give you a hard one.
Okay.
I'm a big supporter,
Hi,
but
Misty.
I have a hard question for you. Knowing what we do about how students currently feel about the culture in our country and the violence going on, what is in the way? What is stopping us from having professional school counselors in the K-8 buildings where they are so desperately needed?
That's unfortunately an easy one also, Ms. D. It's resources. You know, if we had the resources, we'd have the counselors. It's as simple as that. And part of the SAYS strategy has got to be how do we rally all of the resources and not simply rely on school district funds to do all of the services. And part of it is whether it's a K-12 guidance counselor or whether it's a social worker or whether it's some other family support specialist. That's one of the primary things that SAYS puts as a #1 value, because we all know how important it is. But unfortunately, it's an easy question. It's a resource question. Okay. Thanks, Ms. D.
Hello, my name is Lemire, and I'm from Orchard STEM. And my question is, what are your plans to stop bullying? And I know that the most important thing is passing and grades and test scores, but don't you think that would be the scores would improve if people wanted to come to school?
Absolutely, yeah. So I actually don't think the most important thing is the report card. I think it's important, but I don't think it's the most important. And again, for the last 10 years, this community has invested in what's called social emotional learning for that very reason. And one of my goals set by our Board of Education is about whether students want to come to school, how is attendance, whether families want to engage, how the community feels. So you hit it right on the head. We are always trying to build agency among you, our students, through the Not on Our Watch teams in your schools, bringing in training, bringing in conflict mediation. But we also need to keep in mind that often a lot of bullying this day and age is happening not at school, but out in the community, actually on Twitter or other social media. And so we've got to empower students to treat each other better and to be able to come and let us know when they need help. Go to the planning center and say what's happening so that we can support you. It's got to be an all-of-us solution, and I agree with you 100% that it's really important and that we have to keep working on it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Gordon. My name is Caleb Reed, and I come from James Forrest Rhodes High School. I wanted to ask, as having a sibling that is in IEP, what are you and what is the CMSD system doing to prepare them for careers after high school?
Sure. For those who don't know, an IEP is for a student who has some kind of a learning disability, and it could be a wide variety of learning disabilities. We actually have a fairly large team of district support people and educators who are called intervention specialists to work with our kids and their families. A few things that are really important, and I'm sure you know this from your sibling, is that we have to make sure that our students are treated as typical students first, with the supports they need in place second. And we have to continue to shift this model from an old-fashioned model. And very literally, when I was your age and in school, the special ed classrooms were separate places. They were typically in the basement down by the boiler because those kids were different. We can't do that. We have to think of those kids as unique like each of us and then figure out what they need in order to access the same learning you have. If that's our first priority, then they should have access to the same careers that you're interested in. They should have access to the same advanced placement courses that you're interested in, the same college courses that you're interested in, but with the support that they need in the same way your regular teacher should be doing for you. There are some children who that's not going to be the only opportunity because of the severity of their learning need. And so we have a second transitional training program where we work to help students transition into their equivalent of a college or career experience. And sometimes that's a technical school, sometimes that's a chaperoned kind of work study. So it depends on the severity of the disability, but always with the first key in mind that we are all kids and learners first. And secondly, we need some extra support. If we use that strategy, we will serve all kids well. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Lori Atkins with the Literacy Cooperative. We know that we have a skills gap in our community and that many career opportunities are going unfilled that do not require a four-year degree. What is CMSD doing to promote technical training to both students and their parents, especially in manufacturing and healthcare? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So some of those schools I mentioned, 5 of those campuses are called the Academies of Cleveland, and they are our career technical education centers. We have other career opportunities district-wide, but they're really the hubs of our career centers. We have, over the last year and a half, developed with the construction trades the only school-to-apprenticeship program in Ohio. Our kids don't go from school to a pre-apprentice to apprentice. They go straight to apprentice, presuming they met the skills. We now have this with the Sheet Metal Workers Union, and we're announcing another one coming soon. Stay tuned. We have a deep relationship with WireNet and Magnet and the manufacturing community for precision machining and advanced manufacturing. We have internship and experiences with Cleveland Public Power so that students can go right into a lucrative career in the power business here in Cleveland. And we're continuing to look to expand these. And so one expansion is at our Martin Luther King campus, where we teach health careers for entry-level health careers, where the Cleveland Clinic, who sits right up the street, over the last year and a half has been deeply investing in helping us get our students ready for STNA and other skill-based jobs, and in fact just completely upgraded the learning lab so that it is an advanced modern learning lab like their own employees would learn on in the clinic, as another example of partnership. Literally, as we were walking in, Dr. Johnson from Tri-C was saying, you know, Jane Addams is right across the street. What are we going to do around that business careers pathway that we can do as a campus? And so continuing to create those pathways that go to a certificate, a stackable certificate, a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, credential. And then finally, and our board chair has really pushed on me for this, and it's in my goals now, is how do we also make sure kids go to those jobs? Often we have kids who have the readiness coming out of high school, but as a high school teenager and seeing that first job that's $10 an hour, it sounds really good when we know that's not where they need to be. And so how do we learn from universities that have placement centers that get kids into work before they leave the university? How do we do the same thing as a school district so that before you leave high school, if you're not pursuing a 2-year, 4-year, or technical degree, you are going through Ohio Means Jobs and getting those high-skill, high-demand, high-wage jobs right out of high school with the support of your district. So again, have to think really comprehensively about what is the preparation pathways we're creating, and then how do we make sure you follow those paths. And that's a place where we haven't been, and we're really heading toward now. So thank you again for the question.
I'm Davon Duncan with James Ford Rose, and I want to know how school-based budgets can incorporate more activities for, like,
Yeah, so great question. So school-based budget is how dollars flow to our schools based on the number of kids that attend and the size of the, the kinds of kids that are in those schools. And the problem with any budget is you can only give dollars you have. So if we had more dollars, there'd be more school-based dollars and you'd have more opportunities. When there are less dollars, you have less, right? It's a pipeline problem. And so again, I'm going to go back to this notion that as a community, we cannot continue to think in silos. We can't continue to think school district does all school stuff, city does all city stuff, library does library stuff, county does county. How do they interact? So how do we partner with the recreation centers and the city programs to provide a lot more access to stuff right in schools? We also, I think, have to stop thinking about only the traditional kinds of activities that school districts have had of the past. Those are important. But for example, I have our extracurricular team right now exploring what if we had digital gaming competitions among schools. There are college scholarships for gamers now. Why aren't we the first high school system having you compete for that? That takes more than just the school district. It takes all of us coming together to wrap services and programs, not just after school, but in the summer too. And that's part of the Say Yes work we're trying to build for you. All right? Thank you. Looks like we can sneak one more in. We cannot sneak one more in. Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much.
Today, the City Club is at the Renaissance Cleveland Hotel, where we have been listening to Eric Gordon, CEO of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, present the 2018 State of the Schools Address and do an unbelievable job of responding to student questions. The presenting sponsors for today's forum are KeyBank and PNC, with additional support from Huntington Bank and the Good Community Foundation. We have representatives from all of our sponsoring organizations with us today. Thanks to all of you for your support and partnership. We also offer special thanks to all of the organizations who sponsored the 26 Cleveland schools joining us today, and to KeyBank for their commitment to match every dollar raised through our sponsored school tables to support the City Club Student Participation Program, which provides free attendance for students and their teachers to City Club forums. Additionally, we welcome guests at tables sponsored by many corporations, nonprofits, and community organizations. Please refer to your printed program for a complete list. We appreciate your support and partnership on this annual forum. And that brings us to the end of today's forum. Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Thank you, everyone, for attending. This forum is now adjourned.